Hi friends, Dr. Renee, the women's holistic health expert, back with you today to talk about some signs that may indicate that stress is causing an imbalance in your hormones. Now, if you missed the last video, go back and check it out. I talked about other hormones aside from cortisol that might be imbalanced, either higher or lower because of stress. And so today, we're actually going to dive into some of the symptoms that might be telling you that stress is causing an imbalance. One of them is this feeling of what I call wired tired. And I would often see this in my patients that had adrenal issues. What does that mean? Well, the adrenal glands put out a hormone called, many hormones, but one in particular called cortisol. And what happens is cortisol is high in the morning. Why do you think we wake up? Bing! When your cortisol rises, we wake up. And then throughout the day, cortisol actually has a slow decline and it's low at night. So when it's low at night, we start getting tired, our melatonin starts going up, and we go to sleep, okay? What happens is chronic stress actually causes a dysfunction in that cortisol level, in which sometimes it's low in the morning, causing you to be tired when you should be awake, and it's high at night, which is causing you to be wired when you should be tired. And that's what we call wired tired. That's usually the second phase of what they call adrenal dysfunction, formerly known as adrenal fatigue. And I have an entire ebook on my website at drreneewallenstein.com. Go check it out. You can take an adrenal quiz, get the free ebook, and figure out ways of helping your adrenals survive this stress that we have going on nowadays, okay? Number 2, menstrual irregularities. And if you listen to my last video, you know that stress can actually impact your estrogen levels. And so what happens, and as a review from that last video, high stress levels can cause low estrogen on 2 levels, or 2 ways. One way is actually the precursors to the estrogen, the chemicals that are in the pathway before it can make estrogen actually are shunted away from the production of estrogen in an attempt to make more cortisol, or the stress hormone. That is one way. Number 2, our bodies are smart. If you're super stressed and your body thinks you are too stressed to get pregnant, it's actually going to come from the brain, hormones come from the brain, to signal to the ovaries, now is not a good time, and it actually shuts down those ovaries, causing a low estrogen. So those are 2 ways, but what happens when that occurs? Your periods become irregular. And that can actually originate from signals from the brain. And that can look like one of many pictures. It can look like no period. It can look like periods that are closer together. It can look like periods that are further apart. Or it can look like periods that are crampier than usual. Maybe you had no cramps, then all of a sudden you start having cramps. That might be a sign that your hormones are a little imbalanced and may be due to stress, okay? Cravings for sugar and salt. This is a protective, well, actually it's twofold. If you recall from the first video when I talked about other hormones that might be elevated or depressed due to stress, we talked about insulin and the effects of cortisol on insulin and sugar. So it's like this vicious cycle. So a high stress level will cause an elevated cortisol. An elevated cortisol basically makes your body release more sugar from its storage areas, especially in the liver. Sugar is stored in multiple areas of the body, but it's most accessible from the liver when we need it quick for times of stress. So essentially, stress goes up, cortisol goes up, your body's like, oh, mobilize for a fight. We got a tiger coming, right? We got to run from that tiger. And so you release sugar. But what happens then is that your body's like, oh, alert, alert, too much sugar in the bloodstream. And so then you put out insulin. So the insulin does its job and puts the sugar back into the cells where it belongs, out of the bloodstream. Your blood sugar comes down, but then it comes down so far, your brain alerts, oh my God, your sugar's so low, you're gonna die. Put out more sugar. So you can see where this goes, right? You put out more sugar from your liver, but also if you don't have enough sugar in your liver to put out, what happens is that you start grabbing the sugar. I always talk to my clients and in my groups about, you ever get that point where you're like hangry, like you walk into the kitchen, like just give me a bag of something, and you go into your cabinet and you grab a bag of the first thing you see, because you were so hangry, even though you ate just 2 hours ago, you were so hangry that you just need the quickest source of food possible. And it's usually either a processed carb or candy, right? And then you recall eating it, you're like, right? But then that vicious cycle continues because then you just spiked your blood sugar again, okay? The other thing is salt, because sodium actually replenishes our electrolytes, and sometimes cortisol issues that cause adrenal dysfunction can actually cause a low blood pressure, okay? So that's kind of a protective mechanism from our body saying, you need to keep your blood pressure up, right? So eat that salt so you can get your blood pressure up. So if you're having cravings for salt and sugar, you might want to sit back and be like, ooh, is stress really like playing a part here? And what can I do about it? Which we're going to talk about in the next video. And the last thing is weight gain, especially in the midsection. I saw this all the time with my chronically stressed patients that had adrenal dysfunction and abnormalities in all the other hormones. And it's usually from insulin. And I talked about it in the last video. I just talked about it just now. Once again, that vicious cycle of high blood sugar, insulin getting released from your pancreas to put the sugar away. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. So if you're chronically putting out insulin, and not only that, when you become what they call insulin resistant, so after a while, your cells can become resistant, meaning it won't work anymore. So you're pouring out all this insulin from the pancreas. Now you're pouring it out not only in response to the sugar, but because now your body's not responding, so it has to pour out even more. What does that do? It causes you to store fat, usually in the midsection, okay? So if you're saying, hey, listen, I'm eating right, but I'm gaining weight, think of stress, guys, because it may be more than just what you're eating. It could be the effects of stress on the cortisol, on the insulin, and the sugars. Vicious cycle, right? So I hope that helped. I'm going to be back with you in the next video to talk about some things that you can do to actually help your stress. And just stay tuned. I do have a 5-day free mini course coming next week. It's called the Hack Your Health, the Stress Lab, where I'm going to be talking 5 days about hacking your stress and the effects in different organ systems and what you can do to help. If you're not in it, you should be. It's going to be in my private holistic health community on Facebook called Happy, Healthy, and Holistic with Dr. Renee. Go check it out. Go to my website. Get in that group. Do not miss it. It starts April 27th. Okay, guys, I hope this helped, and we'll be back to talk to you about what you can actually do about this stress. All right, stay tuned.